Hello all, welcome to another episode of Movies with my cat. My name is Nathan, and that's my pal Big Head over there, just off camera, as always. Yeah, Happy New Year's, everyone. I hope it's been as good as it possibly can be for y'all. Of course, now that we're sitting right before spring here, statistically speaking, as far as New Year's go, most New Year's resolutions are already being given up on. And to that I say good. I think New Year's resolutions are stupid. And not so much the motivation behind them, just the notion that, this is the only time that you can make a positive change in your life. If you fall off whatever wagon you're trying to be on, get up, dust yourself off, get back on it. You can do it. That said, if your resolution was the very common, I'm going to the gym this year, no excuses, no matter what. Well, today we're here to give you 3 examples of why it might be for the best that your resolutions failed. Besides, you don't need to work out at the gym. You can always work out at home. I've done it once or twice. And sure, you don't have all the fancy equipment that you'd have at your gym, of course. But at least working out at home, you're allowed to keep your head attached to your body. Now, I'm certainly very sympathetic to anyone out there trying to make a healthy lifestyle change. I've been struggling with it for like the last year. Learning to eat better and stay active when you've lived your entire life the exact opposite of that, it's not easy. Honestly, the exercise is the hardest part for me. All right, yeah, Big Head. He's been way into these fitness blogs, but you got to do the workouts, buddy. You can't just read about them. Right, well, if I'm honest, the movies that we'll be covering today, I'm not sure they're going to do anything to inform your weight loss routine. While some of the aerobics and various exercises do look legit, I'm pretty sure that this here isn't doing anything for you.
Tag the grunts, okay, Gong? Doesn't impress anyone.
I'm struggling with my knacks here, and all you can do is make jokes and chomp on fruit.
But first, as always, with these kinds of episodes, I'm going to lay down a few ground rules for what counts as a workout horror movie, at least for our purposes. So this episode won't be just films that have scenes of aerobics in them. We'd be here forever if that's what it was. But mostly this is just an excuse to show some fun clips. The movies we'll be covering today all use a gym or health spa as the main setting, and that setting is also the main source for, or the catalyst to, the evil hijinks. So a movie like Bloody Muscle Bodybuilder in Hell, while having a bodybuilder as its main character, wouldn't count because it takes place... Right, yeah, or I think it's just a house, a haunted house maybe? Either way, it's not a gym. That said, if you haven't already seen Bloody Muscle Bodybuilder in Hell, get on it. Also, and this is super important, if you're new to the channel, first of all, thanks for watching, but all we cover here are films from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And 2 of our 3 films today are from the late 80s, when a time when leg warmers and headbands and neon spandex, they were all over the place. Especially in horror movies, because gyms and aerobics classes were a great excuse to show ladies bending over a bunch and beefy studs lifting weights. You want me to say ripping iron instead of lifting weights? Okay. Well, people ripping iron and working out, and colorful spandex was an increasingly regular sight in horror from the 80s. Most likely because the late 70s and early 80s saw a huge rise in people attempting to live healthy, conscious lifestyles, which in turn gave rise to a very popular trend that's never really slowed down since its inception: paid memberships and exclusive access to a gym or health spa. And this trend was often exploited not just in the genre of horror, but in pop culture in general. And because VCRs were also a huge trend in the 80s, home workout videos were also all over the place, including in the 80s horror movies. Of course, the ultimate merger of horror and aerobics would have to be a horror icon making their own workout tape. Yeah, no, there's no Christopher Lee Jazzercise. I don't think there is. I didn't check. Pretty sure there's not. But we do have several examples of other horror icons that made workout videos. They might not be Christopher Lee icon status, at least as far as the general movie-going population is concerned. But as far as I'm concerned, Linnea Quigley is my #1 horror icon. And she has been since my brother took me to see Return of the Living Dead at the South Park Mall Theater when I was 7. Linnea Quigley confirmed several things for me, but most applicable to this episode, she confirmed my love of horror movies, so she's an icon to me and to many others as well. And she's also a lot of fun to watch in her 1990 workout tape, Linnea Quigley's Horror Workout. She came up with the idea while working on a film the previous year, making note of how physically demanding it is to run around and pretend to be terrified for the camera. That lightbulb moment resulted in Linnea Quigley's Horror Workout, which honestly takes the exercise a bit more seriously than I thought. Mostly just because Linnea's Horror Workout, it's not really about helping you maintain a healthy lifestyle. More, it's an excuse to show clips from Linnea's previous films, and that's fine by me. Of course, it's also an excuse to show Linnea and her friends having a sexy slumber party workout sesh. But any video that features a zombie workout segment is going to be a good time.
You guys are falling apart. See what I mean? You all want this to happen. Well, do you?
A few years later, in 1994, Lisa Cook's Deadly Workout was released. Lisa Cook, if you're unfamiliar, was the one-time partner of a filmmaker named Todd Jason Cook. Lisa was also often the star of Todd's movies, which are all S.O.V, including some classics like Evil Night and one of our favorites, Death Metal Zombies. So Lisa Cook might not be a mainstream horror icon, but she's certainly a shot-on-video horror icon. Right, yeah, that's fair, I suppose. And it's not a knock on Lisa Cook. She seems like a lovely person.
I tried it. Somehow I thought they were joking with me too, so I turned the radio onto a country station. It was like corroding their brains. They fell to the floor for a good while, until Shingar brought them back to life.
Who the hell is Shingar?
The lead singer of Living Corpse. He revealed his true identity to me before reanimating Brad and the guys.
Now, we've never seen Lisa Cook's Deadly Workout because it's tough to come by, and we don't have, the budget here to, we don't have a budget, right? Yeah, I've been drinking out of the same Powerade bottle for like a month. Anyways, there's really just no way that we could spend that kind of money to see it. The best that we could do was to find a trailer and several reviews on Letterboxd for it, and it seems that it's pretty much, let's call it an homage to Linnea Quigley's Horror Workout. First off, there's some similar dialogue. Also, the setup is pretty much the same as Linnea's Horror Workout, but here Lisa shows us clips of her movies while doing exercise and being menaced by a maniac in a mask instead of zombies. And apparently Lisa Cook even name-checks Linnea Quigley.
In the tradition of Linnea Quigley's Horror Workout comes Lisa Cook's Deadly Workout, an exercise in sheer terror.
But the thing that I saw mentioned the most about Lisa's Deadly Workout is that Lisa's workout attire doesn't quite cover, all the parts of her body that one might expect it to cover. As one comment on Letterboxd explained it, Lisa is wearing a leotard so small that pubes are forming fun little Gallagher wigs on the sides of the fabric.
Talk about jokes. What is this? I have hair, then I don't have hair. Little joke on Gallagher.
Which I imagine that's the selling point for some people. But let's be honest. Both Linnea's Horror Workout and Lisa's Deadly Workout aren't serious workout videos. Laura Gemser, on the other hand, she went full workout video. Though she's been involved in her fair share of horror films, Laura Gemser is mostly known for her role in the Emmanuel movies, of which there are many. Now, while some of the Emmanuel films definitely dip into horror territory, most of them fall into the good old-fashioned category of sleazy exploitation, making Laura Gemser more of an exploitation icon, than anything else.
I gave you an order. Obey it.
Still, her 1980 workout tape called Lookin' Good is as close as we'll get to being able to say a horror actor had a full-on aerobics video. If you know of a different one, let me know in the comments. I'd like to see it. The thing is here about Laura's tape, Laura Gemser herself doesn't really do any of the exercises. She's mostly just seen sitting in a big wicker chair talking about stuff.
Now, just to show you, here's a little secret. Our instructress, Jill, happens to have 3 children at home, 2 boys and a girl, and what's more, there's another on the way. No kidding, it's the truth.
But at least we can say that the participants of this exercise tape are taking it completely seriously. These are honest to goodness, real exercise instructions. It's definitely not just a camera leering at scantily clad ladies in compromising positions.
This is the same exercise you've been doing, with a helping hand from me. Now go slowly. Don't strain yourself or you might get hurt. Now, breathe in and breathe out. Slowly. That's it. Breathe in and out.
No, Big Ed, no. Just... All right, well, those are all fun in their own way, but that's not why we're here. Today, we're here to look at what we're calling the Unholy Trinity of fitness horror. All right, well, let's start with what many have acknowledged as the OG fitness horror film. We're talking 1987's Killer Workout, aka Aero-bicide. Well, Aero-bicide you're going to find most commonly under the name Killer Workout, but I'll be calling it Aero-bicide because, well, I just think it's a more creative name. It's also what the title card says, but most importantly, there is a song called Aero-bicide on the soundtrack. So if someone went through the trouble of writing a theme song, out of respect, that's the name that I'm going by. So as mentioned, Aero-bicide is by and large considered to be the first fitness horror film. There were, of course, earlier movies with, aerobics and aerobic-themed plots. It was just unavoidable in the late 80s especially.
I'll bet Adrian put that up.
What's it all about?
The Aerobathon? It's a contest.
Were you entering?
No.
But as far as horror movies go, Aero-bicide is a pioneer of sorts. But its director, one David Pryor, has an even more celebrated pioneering moment in horror history. That being, in 1983, David Pryor released the S.O.V. classic Sledgehammer, which is often cited as the first shot-on-video, or S.O.V., horror movie that was made exclusively for home video distribution. That meant that you could go rent this thing, at the mom and pop rental stores. And if you like seeing guys, just chow down on sandwiches and have all their friends root for them, it's going to be a movie for you. You're going to want to see this one. As for Aero-bicide, it was shot over 3 weeks in 1985, mostly overnight when they closed the doors at a place called the Beverly Hills Workout Health Club. When that place wasn't available, the North Hollywood YMCA stood in its replacement, And we'll get to the gym soon enough here, but Aero-bicide starts in a woman's home. She just got in, so she checks her answering machine. We learn that her name is Valerie by way of a friend who left a message asking to borrow a dress. Now, I've heard it said that when it comes to literature, the first line should grab you and pull you in. You know, War and Peace has its, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. For Aero-bicide, the first words we hear are,
"Hello, Valerie. Where are you? Call me as soon as you get in. You're not going to believe this, but I finally got a date with that guy from the lighthouse. You know, the one with the incredible bulge in his pants? I can't believe it. I need to borrow that sexy red dress of yours. I know my tits aren't as big as yours, but I'll still look hot in it. So give me a call right away, okay, Valerie? Thanks."
But most importantly, we hear another message left by what I assume to be Valerie's agent telling her that she's got the photo shoot of a lifetime, the cover of Cosmopolitan magazine. Now, Valerie's agent reminds her that she's got to look her best, so, go ahead and hit up that tanning bed. So Valerie heads out to a place called Second Sun to get her tan on. Unfortunately, the tanning bed is turned up too high or something. I don't know how tanning beds work, but the tanning bed catches fire with Valerie stuck inside of it. Then, without explanation, we jump to a place called Rhonda's Workout, where inside we're treated to the first of many scenes of aerobic classes already in session. This one is being led by the gym's namesake, Rhonda. Now, Rhonda is played by Marcia Carr, who's been in several cool things like Maniac Cop and a few women in prison movies. Now, Rhonda is pretty annoyed with having to lead this particular class because, one, there's a gym bro who's like ogling her the whole time, right? And two, this class was supposed to be led by Jamie. That's Jamie right there, played by Teresa Vanderwood. But Jamie not only showed up late, she also spilled the entire contents of her purse. So now she's got to pick all that stuff up, making her even later. Yeah, she does. She's got some important stuff in there, mostly condoms, which at least she's being responsible. As far as safe sex goes, she's totally irresponsible about showing up to work on time. As the class finishes, we learn that beefcake watching Rhonda's and the others working out is a guy named Jimmy, who's played by Fritz Matthews. Fritz Matthews is a regular cast member in Ted Pryor films. Of Fritz Matthews' 7 acting credits, 6 were directed by Ted Pryor, and the 7th was written by Ted.
Hey, you all right?
Yeah.
You all right, man? It's okay. What's the big deal? It's just a flat tire.
I'm all right. All right.
Fritz Matthews was also a helping hand behind the scenes, as he's also credited in Aero-bicide at least as having done some special effects work and helping with the choreography of the stunts, as well as doing some set design. That tanning bed that caught fire in the beginning? He built that, that was him. It looked pretty good. Fritz Matthews seems like an interesting guy. His character Jimmy, though, he's a bit of a pest. He also seems to get shut down by Rhonda on a regular basis. Now, Rhonda's got a business to run, so she has to scold Jamie for being late, But Rhonda is still her friend, so she admits to Jamie, look, I just had a really bad day. She apologizes to Jamie, says, you know what, why don't you go lock up, and then we'll go get dinner. Right, yeah, lock up, shut the gym down for the night. Yeah, no, I know what you're going to say, Big Ed. You're going to say if Jamie was that late, if it was already closing time when she pulled up, why she even bother showing up at all? But there is a perfectly good reason for that, buddy. See, Jamie had to show up to the gym because she had to rifle through everyone's locker and mess with their underwear. So that's perfectly reasonable thing to do there. While going through the lockers, she discovers the body of Aero-bicide's first victim. Her name is Rachel, and she's played by Teresa Truesdell. Poor Rachel was just trying to take a shower in the typical sexy style of an 80s slasher film. But while the sexy shower demise is typical of the genre, the weapon of choice used by the unseen villain is a bit unusual. It seemed to be a giant novelty-sized safety pin. Now, if you were alive in the 80s and old enough to be cognizant of popular accessories, you might recognize the giant safety pin keychain. It was all over the place back in the day. I remember kids having them stuck in their JanSports, which I don't think would fly today. Lieutenant Morgan shows up to investigate the crime. Lieutenant Morgan, he's played by a veteran actor named David Campbell, who I recognize from the awesome horror heist movie Scarecrows. Now, he's in a bunch of stuff, but Lieutenant Morgan here, he starts his investigation off by questioning Rhonda and Jamie. But Rhonda's mostly concerned that this whole hullabaloo here, this, bad stuff that's happening, might affect her business. Otherwise, she's pretty blasé about the whole thing. Jamie, on the other hand, she's pretty broken up.
She was so pretty.
Not anymore.
Now, during Lieutenant Morgan's visit, we learn that the body was left in the locker of a woman named Diane. Diane was a regular at the gym. Now, also in that locker was a bloody knitting needle. Could Diane be the Aero-bicide slasher? Well, before you start to feel all bummed out because a seemingly innocent person was snuffed out in the prime of their life, we get to see another montage of gratuitous aerobics-related undulations. And if all that wiggling neon spandex doesn't cheer you right up, the bumpin' tunes are sure to do the trick. Depending on your taste in music. I do think it's a bit strange, though, that somehow, there was a person just brutally rubbed out just a few hours before, and the health club is still pretty jam-packed. Aside from the fact that the whole place should be cordoned off, so the police can do a thorough investigation, it seems that the gym-going public, they do know what happened, in that gym just hours ago. They know about it. Yet it's still going strong. It's like the threat of eating a giant safety pin hasn't deterred anyone from using the dumbbells at Rhonda's gym. I don't know what that is. I'm guessing that's something you read in your bodybuilding blogs, or I don't know, what's it mean? He doesn't know either. Speaking of bodybuilding, though, we're introduced to Chuck Dawson, the newest employee of Rhonda's gym. He's a certified hunk. Yes. And Chuck, well, he's also eager to get to work.
Great. Where do I start? I'm dying to get to work.
Men's toilet needs scrubbing.
Right.
Chuck is played by Ted Pryor, brother and frequent collaborator of director David Pryor. Ted looked like a bodybuilder because he was an amateur bodybuilder. Ted also looked like a typical 80s Chippendale dancer / Playgirl model because he was also those things, too. Actually, Ted appeared in Playgirl several times, and in the early 80s, he eventually made it to Playgirl Centerfold, March of 1984, if you want to get that issue, where he's referred to as an Adonis. They're not wrong. But as Chuck an Aero-bicide, he's an Adonis who isn't above taking the trash out. While doing so, he runs into Jimmy, the Ogling pest there that we met earlier, and Jimmy warns Chuck, look, man, don't talk to Rhonda because Rhonda, she belongs to Jimmy. And then he swings on Chuck.
Stay away from her. I'm going to take you apart, piece by piece. You just made a mistake.
A regular at the gym named Debbie, played by Diane Copeland, is so impressed by Chuck's takedown of Jimmy, she rewards him with a ride in her convertible. Wait, what? No, when I say they went for a ride in her convertible, that's literally what I mean. See? Look, they're taking a ride. But then a few minutes later, it's implied that they did. Right. But before Chuck goes for that ride, he asks Debbie a few questions about Jimmy the Perv.
So what do you know about this Jimmy Halleck?
I was stupid enough to go out with him a while back.
Why do you say that?
Because the guy is weird. I mean, he likes to tie girls up and do weird things. It's cool to get kinky sometimes, but the guy's just plain weird.
It seems Chuck is digging up information on Jimmy and reporting it back to somebody. Why would he be doing that? Could it be that Jimmy might be the Aero-bicide slasher? Now, speaking of Jimmy, we go right back to another action-packed aerobics workout scene, and there's Jimmy, smiling like a stranger in the park. We're also treated to another incredibly titled workout song called Animal Workout. Yeah, those lyrics that probably wouldn't fly today. But in 1987, comparing a person to various large animals was intended to be motivational. Unfortunately, the upbeat mood is brought down when, after the workout, we see Jimmy callously shut down Diane, the woman whose locker the first victim was found in. But as we see her sad walk home, and then we hear her sad call to her answering service.
Hi. This is Diane Matthews. Did I get any messages? None at all. Thank you.
We get the feeling that Diane isn't long for this earth. And sure enough, she isn't. She's done for. But it just so happens simultaneously to the killer's visit is a visit from Lieutenant Morgan, who almost catches the villain in the act. Almost. Now back at Rhonda's workout, it's closing time, and we see 3 of the gym regulars, including Debbie. Right, yeah, convertible Debbie. We see these people vandalizing the window of the gym with some very interesting graffiti. One tag says the name of the movie, Aero-bicide. The other, it's a perfect segue to the next film in this video, so I'm gonna wait to tell you that. So these 3 vandals, they get dealt with real quick by the unknown assailant, with convertible Debbie wishing that she drove a hardtop when she gets forced into playing the part of the mole in the worst version of Whack-A-Mole. But just as it gets bleak again, we get another helping of swishing neon spandex and hot jams. Honestly, this one's my favorite. It's my personal favorite. But then we're thrust right back into the carnage when 2 gym dudes get finished in quick succession. One with a barbell to the noggin, and the other with that giant monster safety pin. When Chuck comes upon the scene, he starts punching the first face he sees, even though that face has nothing to do with the heinous crimes. That punched face belonged to a guy named Tommy. And then later on, Tommy, he gets it too. But then there's more waggling spandex. It seems Aero-bicide is using the workout scenes as some kind of a palate cleanser to all the violence. But it does occasionally lead to a couple of strange scenes where 80s fluff pop is played over the act of zipping up a body bag.
See you tomorrow, Lieutenant.
Lieutenant Morgan is becoming suspicious of Chuck, but he's also suspicious of Rhonda. Mostly because she's using a letter opener?
Very sharp.
Then you hardly have anything in common with them, do you?
Yeah, got him. Meanwhile, most of the audience, or at least Big Head and I, are pretty suspicious of Jimmy the Perv, Even though Chuck is engaging in some pretty suspect activities, Chuck's like watching Rhonda from behind a bush, as she's relaxing in the pool. But even weirder is Jimmy, who's watching Chuck watch Rhonda from behind a different bush. And they see each other and, then it's on. They start scrapping. 2 flesh mountains going at it. And these 2 fellas don't just play tough in movies. They're actually tough guys, While filming a scene, I'm guessing it's this scene in Aero-bicide, Fritz Matthews, who's playing Jimmy, split his noggin open when he bonked it on a wall-mounted control box of some kind, probably that pointy-looking thing there right behind him. But old Fritz knew that time was money, so instead of going to the ER, he went full Rambo with it and just, stitched himself up on set there. Yeah, I would imagine he probably used spandex thread. I mean, there's probably plenty of it lying around the set. But Ted Pryor, who's playing Chuck, he's no slouch either when it comes to toughness. He reportedly ate real worms while filming a scene in the action opus Deadly Prey. If you don't think that's tough, I'd like to see you try it. So, back to the fight. Jimmy gets the best of Chuck and spin kicks him right into the pool. When Chuck wakes up, Jimmy's long gone. As Chuck recovers in Rhonda's office, the lieutenant grills him. It's revealed that Chuck is a private investigator who was sent to work at the gym by Rhonda's unseen business partner. Chuck's mission was to keep an eye on things. Now, one thing his snooping around did lead to was finding a bunch of candid photos of Rhonda. Just when it seems like the Aero-bicide slasher's identity is clear, the whole situation gets tumped on its head with the reveal of an ice pick and a pair of oatmeal-covered breasts. Aero-bicide is honestly a good, fun 1980s slasher film. It's fun music and fun dialogue and fun twist ending. If you're looking for a good Saturday night movie to stay in with, Aero-bicide's not a bad choice. It's fun enough that you'll forget that you're home on a Saturday night again. But is it really, as previously mentioned, the first horror fitness movie? I don't know. I mean, there's probably something earlier floating around out there that I don't know about. But let's say for our purposes that yes, it is the first fitness horror movie. Or is it? Remember that graffiti spray painted on Rhonda's gym? The one that said Aero-bicide? Well, the other piece of graffiti written said Death Spa. On account of all the deaths there. And wouldn't you know it, just over a year later, another fitness horror film was released called... You got it, buddy. And though Death Spa wasn't released until 1988, well after Aero-bicide, Death Spa existed as a script at least as far back as 1983. So what the heck happened?
Death Spa, an exercise in terror.
A fantastic weight reduction program. People get so thin they disappear.
If you saw our video about the giant snake movie, King Cobra, we explained how it was poised to come out well before another giant snake movie, Anaconda. But King Cobra ran into production issues and it came out well after Anaconda, making it feel more like another ripoff and a long line of ripoffs inspired by Anaconda's success. Of course, you could easily make the argument that even if King Cobra came out first, Anaconda was better produced with a better cast and better acting, not to mention a much larger budget. So it's not unreasonable to believe that even if King Cobra managed to come out first, Anaconda would likely have still overshadowed it. But that's not necessarily the same situation with Aero-bicide versus Death Spa.
Round 1, fight!
As much as we enjoy Aero-bicide, Death Spa pretty much outdoes Aero-bicide in every one of those categories. It's got a great cast, it's well produced, it has a decent budget, and in my opinion, it's a better story. But it's in getting to that better story that caused at least some of the delay in Death Spa coming out. There's a great companion piece written by Blake Harris for the podcast How Did This Get Made? And I'll put a link for it in the description. It's an oral history of the production of Death Spa, and that's where the bulk of this info comes from. In it, though, you do learn that the main driving force behind Death Spa was a producer named Jamie Beardsley, who worked tirelessly to get the movie done. But the long skinny is this. Jamie met a man named Walter Shenson, best known for producing the Beatles movies Help and Hard Day's Night, And he was interested in making a horror movie, and between Walter and Jamie, they began assembling a production team. Now, they found their director and a young talent named Michael, I'm going to go with Fisha? I'm just going to call him Michael. Now that the team was coming together, they were just about ready to shoot their film. The only thing they were missing was an idea for a film. Yeah, but Jamie Beardsley fixed that by bringing on a guy named James Bartroff to write a script. Now, prior to Death Spa, Bartroff didn't have a single writing credit to his name. But after Death Spa, then he only had one other credit for a pinning of a single episode of the What's Happening reboot, What's Happening Now. So it might not surprise you to hear that the first draft of the script for Death Spa wasn't very good. So they brought in a guy named Mitch Paradise to spruce up the script, right? Now, Mitch also didn't have a ton of writing credits under his belt, with just a handful of TV episodes, basically. But one of those episodes was for a TV show called Remington Steele. I'm going to say that qualifies him somehow. But according to Mitch, it wasn't just a sprucing up of the script. It was a total rewrite. Essentially, he says he came up with the idea of all of the gym equipment being run by a computer, which you'll soon see is a huge linchpin in Death Spa's storyline. The script was then given a final sheen by the now well-regarded film critic Kirk Honeycutt, who's not credited because he just didn't want to be. Now that the script was complete, the crew started working on an entirely different project called Echo Park, and they just kind of put Death Spa aside for a long, long time. In fact, filming for Death Spa wouldn't start until June of 1987. So that pretty much ensured that Death Spa would not beat Aero-bicide to the punch as far as being the first fitness horror. That said, Death Spa still delivers the goods. Death Spa was filmed in LA in a real health club that had gone out of business. We get a good look at the exterior of the gym and a sweet-looking neon sign that reads, Star Body Health Spa. That is until we see lightning strike the sign. And now it says, Death Spa. It's right there. You don't see it? It says Death Spa. See it? Well, I see it. It spells out Death Spa. And I thought it was a pretty clever title sequence, honestly. We go through the doors and wander into the dark and empty gym, which is decked out in 1980s neon decor. And this whole opening scene from that sign all the way through the doors there, it's one single shot, and it's pretty impressive. Inside we meet Laura, who just got done with her workout, which consisted of some spinning and leaping. Laura's played by Brenda Bach, who we recognize from Demon Knight. As Laura winds down, gym employee Marvin reminds her that she'll be the last one out, so, don't forget to lock up. Marvin says goodnight to Laura with a full kiss on the lips. Now, they aren't romantically involved with each other, but Marvin is played by Mr. Kinfori, a man who likely needs no introduction here. So yeah, romantically involved or not, you're going to want to plant one on Marvin. Laura decides to hit up the sauna to end the night. She starts to work up a sweat as the steam fills the room. Unfortunately, this isn't regular old relaxation steam. There's something noxious in it. And it's affecting Laura, something awful. We then see this guy. That's Michael, Laura's boyfriend, who I guess fell asleep watching a Beatles movie. The phone rings and wakes Michael up from what seemed like a terrifying dream. Michael's played by William Bummiller, I'm going to go with that, who's done a lot of stuff that we've never seen, But yeah, he's racing to see Laura in a hospital. Yeah, it doesn't really seem like he's going that fast. I mean, I'm sure that thing can go way faster. But he's headed to the hospital, at the very least. Once there, we learn that the sauna steam was actually chlorine vapors that caused chemical burns on Laura's body. She's also blind now. But I believe it's temporary, but still probably not fun. We're back at Starbody Spa, where we see Marvin looking dope in, what is that? Is that a workout jacket? Is that a thing? Or whatever it is, I want one. We also get a chance to meet a couple of Starbody patrons. There's Darla, who's played by Chelsea Fields, who you might recognize as Tila in the Dolph Lundgren classic Masters of the Universe. We also meet Freddy, who's played by David Shaughnessy, and Shaughnessy would go on to be a very successful producer and director of daytime soap operas, winning 4 Emmys. Simultaneously, he was a very successful voice actor in all kinds of video games. But here he's just a goofy Brit trying to show off by lifting too much weight. Yeah, that is a cool shirt. So now the cops show up to investigate Laura's accident. Now those cops would be Lieutenant Fletcher, played by veteran character actor Frank McCarthy, and Sergeant Stone, played by another veteran, Rosalind Cash, who you might recognize from the sci-fi classic The Omega Man. So Lieutenant Fletcher and Sergeant Stone question Michael and one of his business partners, Priscilla, played by Alexa Hamilton. Now the questions here are getting serious, and you can tell because Starbody's lawyer is also present. During this questioning, we learn that what makes Starbody's special is a large portion of the entire gym, including all of the exercise equipment, is controlled by a computer program. This computer program was created by Michael's ex-brother-in-law, David, who's a bit of a computer whiz. Now, David is played by Merritt Butrick, who might be best remembered from the short-lived 80s sitcom Square Pegs, where Merrick played a guy named Johnny Slash.
Totally.
Now, David is Michael's ex-brother-in-law because, as Michael puts it,
What do you mean by former brother-in-law?
My wife is dead.
David is seen at his command center located inside of Starbody's, where he's able to oversee the whole gym with cameras. It's also where he lords over the automated computer system, and sometimes he has a little fun with it.
I think we should help these people. What do you say we increase the resistance?
I love it.
What fun.
So, of course, you know, the police are going to want to question David because it's possible that he used his automated system to cause Laura's accident. But it turns out David's in the clear, and he has a great alibi. See, David was home hacking.
Hacking?
Hacking. Experimenting with computer programs.
Hacking. He's even got the paper printouts to prove he was too busy computer hacking at the time of Laura's accident to have anything to do with it. Of course, this also means that he has a literal paper trail of evidence leading to his hacking crimes, but I guess that's not a big deal in 1988. While the police are there investigating Laura's accident, another one occurs. This time, it's Darla, who goes to dive into the pool when we see a screw mysteriously come loose from the diving board, causing Darla and the board to go tumbling into the pool. Michael and the police all rush in to help. And now the police are even more suspicious of foul play. Michael's also really beginning to think that maybe David and his precious computer program might have something to do with all of these accidents. But what motive would David have to do such a thing? Well, David, he's not too fond of Michael, having found new love with Laura so soon after his twin sister's death. Yeah, I forgot to mention David and his sister, whose name was Catherine. They were twins. We also learn during Michael and David's heated discussion that his sister's newborn child passed away shortly after birth. Meanwhile, the police are suspicious of Michael after learning Catherine's cause of death.
Did you read the printout on that Evans guy about his wife?
Made the front page of the Times. She crisped us up.
She was burned to unrecognizable ashes. Now, does that suggest anything to you?
Yeah. I gotta tell my wife to start smoking in bed.
Yeah, in the 80s, hoping your wife would burn to a crisp in their sleep was considered more of a dad joke than anything else. So in addition to losing a child at birth, we learn that Catherine also set herself on fire as a result. First of all, yeesh, heavy stuff for a movie called Death Spa. That said, we do see that Michael has horrifying dreams of Catherine burning alive. Is that a guilty conscience at work, or just a byproduct of Michael's grief? But before we start to ponder such grim circumstances, Death Spa pulls us back into the carefree, neon-soaked world of an aerobics class in session. I gotta say, Starbody's Health Spa is hands down the nicest health club from any of these movies. I mean, they have a full kitchen that serves gourmet coffee and freshly made smoothies. They got an Olympic-sized pool, and everyone in a management position seems to have a very large personal office. And when David goes to his office to get some work done, he finds a dying baby bird in its nest. That's weird. Now, Death Spa wouldn't be doing its job as an 80s horror film if it didn't give us a nice long look at a group of women taking a shower. You know, so it obliges. And that's when a strange mist comes down in the showers. But even stranger, tiles start to fly off of the wall. It's here in this scene, and right after this scene, that we see a quick cameo of two future TV stars. First, in that storm of haunted tiles, we get an early glimpse of Vanessa Bell Calloway, who would go on to have a whole bunch of memorable TV roles, receiving multiple Image Award nominations over the years. Now, I know her from the US version of Shameless. You know, here in Death Spa, she plays Marcy, who's fun and sassy.
What are you wearing for Mardi Gras? Do you think Snow White might be pressing my luck? Hey, turn the goddamn lights back on!
Ooh, not bad, honey. Can you get us some men in here, too?
Soon after, we see Michael checking on a couple of regulars to make sure they're okay, one of whom is Karen Parsons, best remembered as Hilary Banks of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You know, I'm telling you this because those are really good factoids you can use to trick a loved one, you know, who wouldn't normally watch something like Death Spa into watching it with you. Now, you can say something like, hey, you like Shameless, right? Yeah, well, Death Spa has an actor from Shameless, you know? Let's see if you can spot him. Say something like that, you know, just lie, basically, yeah. So faulty diving boards and flying tiles, those are all frightening. But at least nobody's died. That is until a particularly gruesome accident with a piece of gym equipment. I think it's called a chest press. I could be making that up. Now this piece of equipment, it seems, keeps increasing the weight and increasing the weight and increasing the weight until... An emergency meeting is called, and we see Michael in the control room with David and another business partner named Tom. Now, fearing that the computer system is experiencing dangerous glitches, Michael insists that it be shut down for good before someone else gets hurt. But David rightly points out that a computer glitch wouldn't cause tiles to fly off of a wall or a screw to loosen on the diving board. Not to mention, we hear in passing that Marvin personally repaired the diving board beforehand, you know?
Hey, Marv, thanks for checking out the new diving board for me. I really appreciate it.
Oh.
Did you try it out yet?
No, not yet. I will later today.
Be careful.
And I gotta assume that when Marvin gets his hands on things, they get done right. Then Tom reminds Michael that they have a big Mardi Gras party coming up at the gym. And since the automated equipment is the main draw, Tom insists that the system stays on. So Michael is worried. But it's not all bad news because it's time for Laura to come home from the hospital. She's still got bandages on her eyes, but that's not going to stop them from having a good time, which includes some sensual asparagus play.
Sure beats hospital food.
Now, Michael asks Laura to move in with him at his awesome house, and she agrees. But first they gotta stop at the gym. Now, previous to them showing up at the gym, we see the fun and sassy Marcy ending her night at the gym. Now, once she's in the locker room, things start to get really strange for Marcy. And then much, much worse than strange. Once Michael and Laura arrive, we see Laura wandering that same spooky locker room. She opens her locker and doesn't see the body of Marcy, of course, on account of the eye bandages. Meanwhile, Michael logs into the gym system using the password Catherine, of course the name of his deceased wife. It's then that we see a message, and that old familiar green dots text appearing on the screen. It says, Michael can't help but think that Catherine is trying to reach out from the other side. Now this is beyond Michael's scope of understanding, so he goes to see a paranormal investigator named Dr. Murray, who practices something called psychometry.
What I've just demonstrated is called psychometry, the ability to acquire, while in contact with an object, paranormal knowledge of its history or facts about its present or previous owners.
The doc is played by veteran character actor Joseph Whipp, who you might recognize from Nightmare on Elm Street or Scream. When Dr. Murray applies his psychometry technique to an item that belonged to Catherine, Michael, he's not impressed, because the doctor isn't saying anything that wasn't in the newspapers. That is until he says this.
A bird's nest. That's what she thought of your family, like a bird building its nest, the mama bird, the papa bird, and the baby.
So now we know the significance of the weird baby bird in Michael's office. The doctor also lays out the full horror of what actually happened to Catherine.
She went into labor with your child and something happened to her lower spine. A cripple growing progressively more bitter and depressed. Jealous, too. And then one day she went into the garden, doused herself with gasoline and set herself on fire. Burned to unrecognizable ashes.
So if you're keeping score, not only did Catherine lose her child at birth, she also lost the use of her legs after giving birth to that child. Correct, yeah, and then she set herself on fire. Again, the movie's called Death Spa. Surprisingly devastating stuff. Not a scenario I expected, and a movie that in some parts of the world is referred to as Witch Bitch. Dr. Murray is invited to Star Bodies to investigate and hopefully get some answers. But then things get pretty weird for him too. So why do people keep turning up slashed, slayed, or melted at Star Bodies Health Spa? Who's doing it? Are we looking for a sinister human or a sinister spirit? Or is it possible that a faulty computer program really is responsible for all of this mayhem? In a fair world, Death Spa would have a much bigger audience than it does. It's definitely got its fans, but it should have more. The cast is great, the story is cool, Marvin is cool.
And that's the end of that. I like it.
And there are a few real moments of terror in Death Spa. Visually it has some gnarly stuff going on, including some goopy special effects that are all practical, of course, and they're pretty dang good too. And they weren't shy about spraying the red stuff all over the screen here and there. It was enough that the crew reportedly wore rain ponchos while shooting the bloodier scenes to keep their clothes from, getting ruined. As for director Michael Fisha? As for director Michael, he went on to direct 1989's super fun My Mom's a Werewolf. Really cool movie if you haven't seen it. He also directed the cult action flick Crack House. It's a cool name. So yeah, Death Spa is awesome, and it seemed to be made by people that really cared about it. Now, our next and final movie in this unholy trinity of fitness movies was also made by people who really cared about their film, even if it doesn't always seem like it. You've heard us use the abbreviation S.O.V in our videos before. Heck, we mentioned it earlier in this video. And if you're here, you probably already know this, but if not, an S.O.V movie is simply a movie shot on a video using something that you likely bought, at a pawn shop or Circuit City or something like that, and not shot on film with professional equipment, S.O.V films are especially prevalent in the horror genre, and the 80s and 90s were littered with them. Some good, some great.
Young man look just like Linnea. See, son, I see. Miss you, Mommy. I missed you too, baby. Love you, Mommy. You too. Will you tell me a story? Yes, Mommy, tell you a story. Go in there and sit down and Mommy go get the book.
And some, well, they exist.
How can we get in there? Tell her! Tell her! How can I get in there? Go back!
Now, I'm not the guy, to go to for a comprehensive breakdown of the history of S.O.V. movies. For that, I would point you in the direction of Bleeding Skull. Start there, maybe, and check out both of their books if you can. But what I will say to those uninitiated to the S.O.V. movie is this. If you've ever seen a movie where the whole thing looks like, the in-between non-sexy parts of your dad's sock drawer movie collection, more than likely you're watching an S.O.V. movie. They were and still are a way for filmmakers not plugged into the mainstream filmmaking world to make their own films, and more importantly, to make them on a shoestring budget. So when I say that our next film might look like they didn't care about anything when they made it, what I really meant was it's an S.O.V. film, and 90% of S.O.V. films just look like that. They can't help it, and quite often it's the most endearing thing about them. But knowing that S.O.Vs are made with very little resources by tiny groups of friends and family pitching in, to say they don't care about their project is entirely inaccurate. It's these people that often care the most. So I'm going to give Mike Bowler, the director of Hellspaw, the benefit of the doubt and say, just because Hellspaw feels like a half-baked idea that was filmed over a long weekend by people with nothing better to do, doesn't mean he didn't care about it. In fact, you could argue that Mike Bowler liked Hellspaw so much that he used it twice. Just to get this out of the way real quick, in the year 2000, Mike Bowler also made a movie called Club Dead. And Club Dead, to my understanding, because I've never actually seen it, is made up mostly of footage from Hellspaw. The only difference being the added footage of Disney child actor Tommy Kirk as a private investigator. I kind of wish there was a private investigator in Hellspaw. Because I have a few questions that I'd like answered, which I'll get to those in a bit. Big Head actually is going to probably have some questions here too, because he fell asleep almost immediately after the opening song. Hellspaw starts with a rockin' tune, and it's one we recognize. After some digging around, I found out that a guy named Dennis Devine was the co-writer of Hellspaw, and Dennis Devine is a fairly prolific S.O.V. filmmaker. One of his S.O.V. movies is one that Big Head and I have seen called Dead Girls. And that's where we know this song from. We then see a woman frantically packing, clearly running from someone or something, when a voice comes over the Realistic brand radio.
Flight Deborah H. has failed to fulfill her contract with the corporation.
I didn't mean to. It was a mistake.
Recommend termination.
God! Wait, come back!
Effective immediately.
I had a Realistic stereo as a kid. It wasn't as good as my York stereo. which was also a piece of junk, and neither of them spoke to me. Not directly, at least. Soon a shadowy figure in a wide-brim hat is seen stalking this woman, whose name is Deborah, but that doesn't matter, honestly. Whereas our two previous entries started off at a gym, which seems reasonable. You know, some might even say logical. Mike Bowler said, nah, that's been done before, and that's just what they'll be expecting. Instead, let's kick off at the very next logical place a movie about a health ball might start. An auto mechanic shop. Yeah, initially this seems like an odd choice. That might just be you specifically, buddy, that connects donuts to working out. When the man in the hat eventually catches up with Deborah, he does her in big time with a piece of garage equipment to the noggin. And honestly, that's a good enough reason for me to start off a gym movie in a garage instead of a gym. We then see the man in the hat communicating via computer with someone named Dragon. We get more DOS-based information, so that's fun nostalgia for someone, I'm sure. The information seen on the computer screen kind of clears things up, at least logistically, as to why Hellspaw starts off inside of a hell garage. It seems Deborah was the owner of McCormick's Diesel and Brake, a mechanic shop that was failing and subsequently helped by the man in the hat and his organization. And what we see happen to Deborah and McCormick's Diesel and Brake is simply an example of what happens when you don't hold up your end of the organization's unholy pact. Yeah. Yes, well, I filled in a few blanks for you, which you'll find out sort of for yourself eventually. You're welcome. And so now all that's left for the Hat Man to do is tie up some loose ends. In this case, those loose ends would be Deborah's children, Marcia and Maggie. Dragon also sends this message. Apparently, this is enough information for the man in the hat to know what to do next. Go to Benson's gym and exploit another desperate business owner. So in the next scene, we're taken to Benson's gym. And right away, we can see it's different from the gyms in our two previous entries. You know, just for comparison, to remind you of what the Starbody gym looked like in Death Spa. You know, and it's pretty nice. And here's another look at Rhonda's gym in Aero-bicide. Pretty classy stuff. Now, while both of those movies were shot in LA, Hellspaw was shot a few miles north of LA in a place called the Antelope Valley. I've never been there, and it does look lovely, but I think because of this and the fact that Hellspaw was made not in the 80s, but in 1990, that I think this is why our first look at Benson's gym and Hellspaw looks more like your uncle's underground bunker than anything else.
Tag the grounds, okay, Gong? Doesn't impress anyone.
I'm struggling with my knacks here, and all you can do is make jokes and chomp on fruit.
So here at Benson's gym, we meet a couple of the regulars. Actually, these would be seemingly the only regulars at Benson's gym. That's part of the problem. No one's there. The guy grunting is Marty, and he delivers every line like this.
Hell, why don't we go down to Harry's bar and chug a few Boilermakers? That'll cheer you up.
Yeah, me too. Marty is played by Godfrey Hughley, who, unless you know him personally, you've never seen him anywhere before or since Hellspaw. Then there's the oddly named Doyle Shakespeare, played by Leona Small. Doyle Shakespeare isn't her real name. She changed it for reasons that I don't think we ever find out, and I honestly don't remember hearing any reason for the name change, but maybe I missed it. And rounding out the regulars at Benson's gym is Rock.
I'm Rock Jarvis. It's R-O-Q-U-E, not like Rock Hudson.
Rock is played by Augie Blunt. Augie Blunt spent the majority of his life as a teacher and a musician in Los Angeles, only deciding in the last 10 years of his life to take up acting. If you recognize anyone from this group, it might be Augie Blunt. Here he is in the Patrick Swayze classic Ghost.
Don't you ever do that to me again? Orlando? Ugh.
And here's Augie playing a saxophone for Uncle Jesse in Full House.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our commencement ceremony.
Now, here we meet Rona Benson, owner of Benson's Gym. Now, Rona, she's played by Deirdre West, and unfortunately, Rona has some bad news for her 3 regular customers.
I have an important announcement, my dears.
You okay, Mrs. Benson? You don't look very good.
No, I'm not, Doyle. I'm afraid I'm going to have to close the spa.
For good, you mean?
I'm afraid so, Rock. You 3 are my only regular customers.
As Rona sits and contemplates her uncertain future, the man in the hat appears out of nowhere. It's here that we learn his name.
Mr. X. That's EX.
I don't know, they like to spell their names in this movie. Mr. X is credited as being played by an actor named Ron Waldron, but I've read others that say this actor's name is actually Tim Abell. So Mr. X reveals to Rona that he would like to make her an offer to help. And to show he's serious, Mr. X throws down a stack of cash, or in this case, a couple of $100 bills, which for a movie with Health Spa's budget counts as a stack of cash. Yeah, it's more than I have. So with the help of Mr. X and his organization, he guarantees to not only make the gym profitable again, but to return Rona to her youthful beauty. All Mr. X asks for in return is a few favors. And Rona agrees. We're then taken to the workspace for a college campus newspaper. This is where Doyle works. Although the credits don't specifically say it. I connected a few dots, and I'm pretty sure that this is Antelope Valley College, a community college in Lancaster, California, home to the Marauders. That's their mascot, the Marauders, which is actually pretty on brand for a horror movie. We're introduced to her co-workers there. There's Ken, played by Raymond Storti, and he's presented as a meathead jock type, but his glasses and job at the school newspaper say otherwise. Now, Ken and Doyle, they bicker a lot.
Just trying to figure out how many S's
do something useful, like cover more women's sports.
Because nobody wants to read about women's sports.
So says the dumb jock who could only enroll with a football scholarship.
Hey, that's not fair, Doyle. I'm not even on that scholarship anymore.
You're still a dumb jock.
Shut up! Both of you!
Now, the woman telling them to shut up, that's Kathy. Now, she's the editor-in-chief, and she's played by... No, that's not Cordelia from Buffy. This is Lisa Bodden, and she's never been in Buffy the Vampire Slayer or anything else other than Health Spa, at least according to IMDb. I'm not sure why, because she did pretty well, honestly. I mean, she's probably the best performance in this movie.
To be fat or not to be fat? That is the question.
Now, Kathy also happens to know Maggie and Marcia. Remember them, the loose ends? It's not explained how she knows them, but she does. And she's worried about them because she can't get a hold of them. We soon learn that Rock runs a print shop, so he's also a semi-regular at the office of the school newspaper. He's comfortable enough there that he could sneak up on Kathy and do the old guess who game. As Kathy leaves the newspaper offices, she runs into Marcia, who is desperately afraid. The two rush to Kathy's nearby apartment for safety. Marcia essentially breaks down the agreement between Mr. X and her mom's auto shop. And it's the same agreement we just saw Mr. X make with Rona. Marcia is positive that Mr. X is the one behind both her and her mom's disappearance. Now, Maggie even mentions that in addition to business picking up at the garage, her mom started to look younger somehow. But just as suddenly as Marcia ran into Kathy, she's pulled out of a door by a pair of gloved hands. Heidi Gross, who plays Marcia, she also hasn't been in anything but Health Spa. I'm just going to say this now. That's kind of true for most of the cast of Health Spa. So part of Mr. X's plan for the success of Benson's Gym is advertising. That's a good idea, right? And that advertising comes in the form of a commercial.
Have fun in our spacious aerobics room while shedding those unwanted pounds.
After a hard workout, relax in our soothing spa.
You too can look like this. It's simple. It's guaranteed. That's right, this is the only spa that offers this one-of-a-kind guarantee. You look beautiful and stay fit, or you never pay a penny. You heard right. Call us today. We're in the phone book. What have you got to lose?
Yeah, it's a much better commercial than Health Spa as a movie, if I'm honest. Also, it looks like they used a real phone number there. You know, I know it says 666, but it didn't say 555, so I don't know. I'm sure someone got a call somewhere asking for Mr. X.
We're in business.
So the commercial seems to work pretty good because The place does start to look a little better, even though it still kind of reminds me of the inside of like a doomsday cult meeting place that's tucked away in a long-forgotten shopping center somewhere. But still, it's slightly better. Now we're back with the original three regulars there, Doyle, Rock, and of course, Marty. And after seeing them interact, Mr. X thinks that Rona should hire Marty as the supervisor of recruitment. We then see the communication between Mr. X and this dragon character, and it does seem like they're taking a shot at Marty, displaying his IQ at 85. Meanwhile, back at the offices of the school paper, Doyle explains the incredible new deal Benson's gym is offering. It's called Plan X.
Oh, by the way, Benson's new health club has this ridiculous offer. They guarantee you lose weight and look great, or you don't pay anything. Can you believe that?
Sounds like a sports story to me.
Probably more like a general feature. Go tackle it, Doyle.
So now Doyle's off to do some investigative journalism down at Benson's gym. Now we see Marty giving a demonstration on what Plan X can do for anyone who wants to sign up. So Doyle signs up for the plan, which includes a lifetime contract. But it must be good because Rona's been doing it, and Doyle thinks that she looks better than ever, younger even somehow. Seeing that Doyle displays a keen awareness to Rona's newfound youthfulness, and also, that Doyle boasts an impressive IQ of 145, she is marked as a threat. So Dragon recommends that Doyle be monitored closely. Apparently that monitoring includes Doyle's trip to the local yogurt shop.
This is absurd. Look at that! You have a whole machine full of yogurt. How come you can't serve me?
I just can't. Orders. I'm sorry.
Well, what's your name? I'm gonna report this joint to the Better Business Bureau. And please tell me who told you not to serve me. Oh, you have not heard the end of this!
With Doyle out on a mission, Ken and Kathy are left alone to talk about various things, like Ken's surprising knowledge and computer know-how.
I'm working on my own program. It's for my dad for his birthday. He's a minister. So I came up with this Devil Buster program. It's like a cross between a virus and a game. I took lines from the Bible and I converted them to computer language. And you see what comes out. I thought he'd get a kick out of it.
Ken and Kathy are also actively looking for Marcia. They go to her last known address to look for some answers. But the guy that's there says he's lived there forever, and he doesn't know any Marcia, so, get lost. Then they track down Professor Kelly, who teaches Marcia's deviant lifestyles class, but not only has this guy not heard from Marcia, he says nobody named Marcia is even in his class. Professor Kelly is played by Mike Bowler, the director and co-writer of Hellspaw, so if you want to be mad at someone for Hellspaw, this is your guy. Since Professor Kelly wasn't any help in their search, Ken and Kathy go to the police. They're not much help either, though.
Hey, our friend is missing. She could be in serious trouble. All you can do is chop apples and make wise-ass jokes. Shut your mouth, mister. I'll shut it for you.
Yep, that was an X. No, there's no explanation. Doyle's come back to the office to report on what she's found out about the Plan X program. Basically, she's pretty sure it's some kind of cult.
I talked to this strange, I don't know what to call him, male Caucasian, totally covered by black clothing. I mean, completely. All you could see is a little of his face and his evil eyes.
What are you talking about?
Well, the spa. I signed up for a life membership in that Plan X I told you about. It's some kind of bizarre cult. That's what it is. The guy in charge, he says his name is Mr. X.
But more than that, the way Doyle describes Mr. X makes Kathy think he might be the same guy that caused the disappearance of Maggie and Marcia. And what was the thing that made Kathy think this?
Covered in clothes. That's how Marcia described the guy that took over her mother's auto garage.
You think this is the same guy?
It might be just a coincidence.
Seems pretty vague. Covered in clothes could be anyone. Yeah, that's true, I guess. You do wear hats sometimes. Anyhow, back at Kathy's place, she and Ken get romantic over a dinner of canned beans.
Ken?
What's wrong?
There's something out there, and it took my beans.
Huh?
Down at Benson's gym, the members are taking part in a weigh-in to see if they're sticking to their required diets and workout routine. Rock is up to the scale, but he hasn't lost the required 3 pounds per week. Mr. X isn't happy about it and warns him that the Plan X program always works, one way or another. The next day when Rock shows up at the newspaper offices to get the paper from the print shop, he's so malnourished that he doesn't even know what day it is. Kathy, feeling, worried for the guy, he forces him to eat a candy bar, basically.
Really, I can't.
Go ahead, Rock, take it. You can't go cold turkey.
Don't say turkey. I love turkey.
Take it. You need the energy.
Thank you. I'll be better tomorrow. I hope.
But because Mr. X sees all, he knows about the candy bar, and he confronts Rock about it in his own home. If Rock can't lose those required 3 pounds through exercise and a disciplined diet, he'll lose it another way. So, Mr. X takes Rock's pinky. I mean, not 3 pounds. But I guess it's more about the message at that point. The next day, Rock, who now sports a conspicuous pair of gloves, sees Doyle chowing down. She's actually trying to gain weight, I suppose to further her investigation and find out what happens, if you gain weight. And Rock, he begs her not to test, the authority of Mr. X. Doyle also notices Rock's hands and soon discovers his missing finger. Outraged, Doyle vows to write a scathing column in the school paper for everyone to read about. But when the paper comes out, Doyle's story is nowhere to be found. Now she wants answers, and she's not backing down, despite knowing the possible consequences. Doyle manages to confront Mr. X, but things don't go as planned for Doyle, and suddenly the next day, she's all in with the Plan X.
We just blew everything out of proportion. I mean, X is just a weird businessman who dresses funny.
What?
The plan is harmless, Kath. I mean, really, you should join too.
Oh yeah, also, Ken got kidnapped at some point too. So that just leaves Kathy to figure out what's going on with Mr. X and his Plan X. Luckily, though, she does have a few hunches she can go on.
Why do you suppose X wears all those clothes?
It's almost as if he doesn't want any natural elements to touch his skin, like light and water. It's almost as if he himself isn't a part of nature, or even humanity. That's why he has to protect himself from it all.
Again with the clothes. Most people just wear clothes because they have to, not because they aren't part of humanity or whatever. Seems like a bit of a leap in logic. But let's go with it. Soon enough, Mr. X is granting Kathy an all-access interview and a full guided tour of the Plan X facilities.
Do you practice the occult here?
We are the occult. Really, Miss Clark. Crosses went out with stakes and silver bullets.
Are you the devil?
No, I'm not the devil.
Does that mean you work for him?
Draw your own conclusions, Miss Clark.
So where does that leave us? What are we dealing with here? A supernatural being of some sort? And if so, what's his end game? Like I said, I got a lot of questions here, and none of them have been answered. Why did Doyle change her name? And why does she have hydrophobia? Why does her profile list sea creatures as a fear of hers? Maybe that's why she has hydrophobia? I don't know. And that cop, what's his deal? What's he have an axe for? What's that? Why is his office completely covered in plastic? Maybe Club Dead, with its extra footage of Tommy Kirk as a private investigator, can answer all of my questions. What's that? Yeah, that's not a question. But I hear you, buddy. I can go for a nosh. Watching all of those people working out made me hungry for something really bad for me. Double bacon cheeseburgers, or what do you think? All right, you buy, I'll fly? Deal. I hope if you're on a diet or a workout regimen that you're doing better than Big Head and I are. Also, if you haven't already checked out all of these movies, go ahead and do that, and better yet, watch them with a friend, especially Health Spa, because, that way they can wake you up for all the cool parts. All right, well, thanks for watching all, and Thank you, Big Head, for watching with me. That's right, as always. And we'll see you on the next episode of Movies with My Cat. Bye, all. All right, burger time, dude. Let's do this.
Well, how many reps can you do?
15 or 20, more if I'm showing off.
Well, why don't you show off for me?
I never waste effort in the gym. Besides, I'm Beta, you're VHS.